Welcome, everyone. My name is David Kelly. I'm the Program Director for the E-Learning Guild, and I'd like to welcome you to a Twist conversation with Julian Stodd. Julian is a presenter at the upcoming mLearnCon conference and expo. He'll be doing a pre-conference workshop at the event in San Diego this June, and it's my pleasure to welcome him for a brief conversation here today. Welcome, Julian.
Hi, David. Thank you.
Why don't you take a few minutes and introduce yourself to the people viewing the video?
Excellent. So my name's Julian Stodd. I'm a writer and researcher around learning. So I work around social learning, social leadership. I do a lot of work around mobile learning and social collaborative technologies. I'm very interested in the underlying learning design, but also in really, at a practical level, how we can apply these technologies and approaches to create more effective learning within organizations.
Excellent. And I see that the pre-conference workshop you're going to be doing in San Diego is called Creating Effective Mobile Learning in the Social Age. What does that term, the social age, mean to you in today's day and age?
So I'm using the social age to talk about the evolved ecosystem that we're living and working in today. And the reason I say it's an evolved ecosystem is because pretty much everything has changed over the last few years. So we can start with the nature of work itself. There's this evolved contract between organizations and individuals where we no longer have a job for life. We have a whole series of encounters where we stay with an organization for a few years and then move on. So with that change in career structure, the nature of learning has changed. It's much more reactive, short term. And there's often no one taking a longer term focus on what your development's going to be. So we see this shift in that area. We see a shift in the ways that we engage socially, often through technology, enabling us to maintain very wide numbers of loose social ties, but also to maintain deeper ties across greater spaces. So we're speaking, across the Atlantic with no problem at all, or virtually no problems at all, through very simple technologies. So we're seeing our social life evolving. We're seeing our work life evolving. We're seeing organizations evolve. There's much more of a desire to be socially responsible businesses, to do the right kind of thing. So this leads to changes. It leads to the need for different types of leadership. It leads to a need for different types of learning. And it just so happens that one of those is about mobile technology, because really most of the changes that we're seeing are facilitated by mobile technology. So it's less about which particular gadget, which particular gadget you're holding up. It's more about the ways that they connect us synchronously across geography, the ways they enable us to form communities, the ways they enable us to access information at the touch of a button. It's changed our relationship with knowledge to the point where knowledge itself doesn't really differentiate you. It's your ability to do something with that knowledge that counts, your ability to create some meaning. So in an organizational context, for me as an individual, it's my ability to get stuff done or to form communities that get stuff done. And that's really where the technology comes in. It facilitates me in being more effective.
So can you give us an example of what that means? Because the mobile technology is definitely the one that people are accessing the most, as you said. So can you give some examples of how organizations are leveraging that technology around a social component?
Well, what you can do is you can start by looking at the layers of engagement within an organization. So you have formal hierarchies and structure, which are defined by, if you like, positional power. You have a manager, you have people in your team, you have formal experts you can reach out to within the organization. But what we find now is that people have much wider networks that go beyond the immediate boundaries of the organization. The office itself is a sort of largely abstract construct. We connect with people through these technologies wherever they are and whichever organization they're in. So at a very practical level, when we're coming to get stuff done, we're both forming and joining communities around it, be it around a project or a particular problem. Now, some of those communities are very visible to the organization. So some of them will be the formal communities they host inside. But many of them, like your community on LinkedIn or your community, indeed, with the guild, are semi-formal. They're outside of formal organizational hierarchy. They're facilitated by the technology. That's where a lot of your encounters will happen. But they don't form part of that formal hierarchy. So what we see is that people are engaging in these spaces to help them get their job done more effectively. So they're engaging in formal social space, formal organizational spaces, but they're finding a lot of value in these semi-formal spaces. They're not totally informal. You know, the guild is set up around a common interest, shared values. And you find that these communities are united by shared purpose. That's what causes you to be in one group, but not in another one. And we find that people's roles are far more fluid as well within these kind of groups. So especially around something like technology, some people will come in with a specific niche expertise, and at times they'll act as an expert, but at other times they'll engage in the same or in other communities as a learner. So our roles in these social spaces are far more fluid than they would be in formal organizational roles. So it's having a subtle but very pervasive influence on how we do our jobs day to day. And you can start by looking at where those communities are, which ones are hidden, which ones are visible, and thinking about the roles that you take as you engage with them.
So we're talking about new types of technologies, a shift into a less formal or semi-formal, as you said, way in which people are learning. There's a different skill set that's required for people who are in our field in order to support that. What do you see as the skills that are really needed by the people who are supporting these new environments that you're talking about?
So I think the social collaborative technology, social technology only works when it's effortless. It has to be easy. A lot of the early implementations of technology were very much about infrastructure and about systems, the big enterprise level solutions. And they were kind of complex. They were hard to set up, they were expensive to implement, and you had to learn how to use them. Social technology is kind of on our terms, so it's as simple as just turning it on and swiping something and you're straight in there. And if you think about learning design, it has to be the same. It has to be on our terms. So the ways that we're used to interacting with this technology is for it to be at our beck and call, to effortlessly find things out, to effortlessly share it. So when it comes to learning design, we have to be tying in with the with the native behaviors of the learner. So I tend to look at it around a 6-stage methodology, which is around how we're setting the context for learning, how we're doing that within the learning design, how are we demonstrating the behaviors and the skills that we're talking about, where are we giving the spaces to play and to co-create meaning, because exploration, the playing with learning, is a very important part of it. We need spaces for reflection, so we need people to be telling stories, building a personal narrative of their learning. We then have to think about formal assessment and performance support as you go into bridging the gap between the learning and your everyday reality. Now, some of those things can be done extremely well through mobile, some things very badly. And a lot of the early adoption of mobile learning was taking existing e-learning courses and just porting them across to mobile. So you ended up with materials which are designed to be used in one context, being consumed in a very different environment on very different technologies. And that's why we saw a lot of sort of failing of early mobile learning adoption. So I think that the trick is to look at that learning design piece. You need all of those components in place for effective learning to take place, but not necessarily all of them happening through the mobile device itself. So when I get into looking at the methodology of designing for mobile, it's about a mindset. So it's about understanding how people learn and how people interact with these technologies. And at a very practical level, it's about thinking about how we design in these spaces. What can we do effectively? And what are we just doing because that's what we used to do in traditional e-learning?
And I completely agree, and I see a lot of that discussion going on around mobile learning right now, that an awareness of taking advantage of the unique affordances of the devices. So if I was going to be coming to your workshop to learn how to design effective social community-based learning environments leveraging a mobile device, what can I expect in the workshop throughout the day? What would my experience be?
Well, it's very practical, so I'm quite keen on getting hands-on with things. So we'll have a look through at the start, doing some exercises about understanding our evolved relationship with the technologies and the ways that we use communities, because those two parts of it, the community and the technology, are the foundations. After that, it's really about exploring those 6 steps of the learning methodology in detail. So it's context, demonstration, exploration, reflection, and then assessment, and what we call footsteps, which is ongoing performance support. And for each of those stages, I think it's about thinking what we would do in traditional learning design, the opportunities which are afforded within mobile, and then thinking, most importantly, how we can build a coherent narrative through each of those sections. So as a learner, you need a seamless learning experience. And it might be just on mobile, but it might be tying in as a blended learning approach to other elements. So very often it's tying into external resources, into communities, as you get into scaffolded social learning approaches, which also use community spaces. But really, it's going to be all about how we design learning, which includes mobile, but which is highly effective, which changes skills, behaviors, and attitudes in that population.
Excellent. Well, you started the conversation talking about the evolving ecosystem, and I definitely see a lot of what you're talking about matching the direction that our industry and the way people are learning is naturally going. So it's going to be a really interesting workshop for the people that come and participate. I'm really happy to have you as part of the conference this year.
I'm greatly looking forward to it. Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
If you want to learn more about Julian's workshop or any of the pre-conference workshops that are going on in San Diego this June at the mLearnCon Conference and Expo, please do visit our website that you'll see down in the comments, and you can get more information about all the pre-conference workshops and all the different certificate programs and concurrent sessions that are going to be going on at the mLearnCon Conference and Expo this June in San Diego. Julian, thanks so much for joining us for this brief conversation. Have a great day.
Thank you, you too. Bye.